Okay, so my name is Julie Wright, and I've lived here in Grand Island for about 17 years, and I'm an entrepreneur, and then I've also just been a very driven community advocate and community volunteer, and I was just really tired of sitting on the sidelines, and again, Grand Island's good, we're in a good place, but I just have some ideas to take it kind of to great and to be competitive with neighboring communities, so that's why I decided to run.
You know, as a community, we're kind of a weird community because we're kind of the biggest of the small cities or the smallest of the big. We're kind of on our own. Do you think we're at a turning point as a community? We're kind of maybe ready to take some of those next steps to, chart the course for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always a big fan. We don't need to recreate the wheel, but can look at what other communities have done and what's been successful. And so it is interesting how we're shifting our focus from smaller towns and villages to really what are these big guys doing? And, even if we're thinking 10 years in advance, but looking to them as role models.
What are some of the priorities you think that the next mayor should have for the community?
Yeah, obviously recruitment and retainment, that's something that's on top of everyone's mind. But so those are big pieces. And just bringing that new energy, making it somewhere that people want to come live. When they bring their friends here for the weekend, they're excited to show Grand Island off. And then beyond that, obviously, if we're going to recruit people to Grand Island, we need to have the housing and the daycare to support them.
You just preempted a couple of the questions I was going to ask. So let's drill into like that workforce issue.
Yeah.
I talk to employers. It is a struggle. Our unemployment in this community is like 2%. I mean, basically everybody who wants a job has a job. We have to get creative, and especially attracting young talents and all of that.
Absolutely. I think a part of this is going to be company culture and how do companies set themselves apart, maybe get creative with some of the things they can offer, some things they never thought about before. It doesn't have to be anything that costs the company money, but just thinking outside the box. And I think that leadership really has to start from City Hall and trickle down.
And then the housing, what they consider affordable housing in this community. Frankly, somebody who's maybe in a kind of a starting job coming here, I wonder how they can afford some of these places.
Yeah, again, when it comes to housing, we're going to have to get creative. This, just build a house isn't always a solution. I think there are innovative solutions with vacant houses that we have in this community, with other partnerships. I think we're just going to have to think outside the box.
We've already done things where we've allowed houses on smaller lot sizes, or, like you said, or do we have to go into some of our existing neighborhoods and maybe find some ways to rehabilitate houses? I mean, do we have to consider kind of an all of the above strategy to housing?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think we just have to think of new housing. I think we have to think of how do we utilize every house that we have here in Grand Island. I think we also have to think infrastructure. That's often the piece that builders can maybe afford to build a house, but the infrastructure piece is big, and that's where I think the city may want to come along, and really that would expedite the building process.
Then in terms of being a mayor, you are kind of, setting the tone for the community in a lot of different ways. Let's talk about one of those, just financially and budgets and priorities and determining, should we put money into infrastructure or should it go into law enforcement, or how do we balance these? So how would you go about approaching some of that?
Yeah. So, I would operate it similar to what I do with my own business. I think really getting everyone at the table, getting the department heads at the table, it's easy to go behind someone's back and say, I need a piece of their pie. But I think it's really, we have to come at this as a united front and look at it, as many voices on the table. And I think everyone wants the best for Grand Island. That's pretty apparent. And so it's just finding those solutions to get there.
Do you think your background as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's a mom with kids, there's not a lot of people who are parents of kids in school these days who run for city government. Do you think that some of those things give you maybe a different perspective?
Absolutely. I think I can bring a new energy to Grand Island. I am a mom. I am a working mom, an entrepreneur. And so I think, just bringing that new perspective, that new energy is really what our city needs.
I look at all the things happening downtown, which when my office left downtown in 2012, I felt, I've said this a million times, but when I left on a Friday night, I was like the last one out of downtown. It was pretty sad. Now I look at all the positive momentum here. This block in particular, just in the last few years, what has happened on this block is unbelievable. We're starting to see Amour and the bank down the street, and outside investment coming in. Here, Grand Island, I could go on and on and on. Are there some strengths here that we can build on as part of our community identity and all of that?
Absolutely. I went to a statewide leadership conference, and it was fun to hear other leaders say, oh my gosh, I was just in Grand Island, I hadn't been there for years. That is so cool. And I think sometimes when live here, I live right downtown, we kind of forget about how neat this area is, and sometimes it does take the outsider's perspective to ooh and ah a little bit to realize we really do have a gem, and how can we keep this momentum going to other areas of town as well.
I love going across the railroad tracks to 4th Street and businesses there. Talk to me a little bit about just the diversity of our community.
Yeah.
Some people would see that as a negative, but do you see that as a strength of our community?
Absolutely. I think Grand Island really needs to begin to focus on the diversity as a strength, as a beautiful diversity. We need to celebrate it, and we need to communicate it well. I feel like oftentimes when it's not communicated or celebrated, it's kind of thought of as a forefront, and that really needs to be at the front burner of everything that we're doing, and needs to be celebrated.
You know, do you think, I'm just going to check my camera, make sure we're still good there. You know, as mayor, as you're appointing people to committees and boards, and do we need to include diverse opinions, whether that's people who are older or younger or of various ethnic backgrounds or whatever? I mean, are those things you would consider?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there needs to be programs, and there already are in the works, to kind of move that dial from when you just get settled into town to what does it look like to join your first board? What does a city council meeting look like? And I feel like oftentimes we skip those small steps and think it goes directly from just moving into town into running for office or being an executive director, but there's actually a lot of steps that I think we could help people along that path, no matter when they move to Grand Island.
Tell me a little bit about that for you. What are some of those little small steps, you know, in leadership that you have taken? Yeah,
absolutely. So when I moved here, I was 19 years old. I didn't know anyone, and I grew up in a small town of Seward. Went to high school in Lincoln, to Lincoln High, a very diverse high school, and I felt that Grand Island was really that perfect mix. It wasn't quite as big city, but it was small.
Sure.
And I really just tried to get plugged in, joining boards, joining groups, committees, advisory boards, and just making those connections. And again, those connections were what encouraged me to run and have supported my campaign.
You mentioned you're an entrepreneur. Maybe be a little more specific. Tell me about your business
Yeah,
background.
absolutely. So I started my business 2 weeks after high school as a photographer. That is the only business or the only job I've had since high school, and now 19 years later, it's transitioned to a full-service marketing agency called Tally Creative. So we've grown to be a team of 7 full-time marketing and brand experts. My husband and I also own Big Red Treats, and then we've redeveloped 3 buildings in the last 5 years here downtown.
Very good. And tell me about your family then, too.
Yeah. I'm the mom of 4 busy kiddos, so they're from 11 to 16, and so I'm very active in school activities, church activities, and everything that they're involved in.
Awesome. In terms of, we talked a little bit about, let's get into some of the nitty gritty of if you're mayor, you know, you've got to be in charge of kind of some policy stuff, working with 10 people on the city council, working with department heads. Occasionally we're going to have people that we're going to have to hire probably some department heads. We're going to have some retirements, or, you know, how do you just approach just all those kind of day-to-day things that maybe being mayor does?
Yeah. Absolutely, and I think when it comes to working together, again, making sure that company culture is where it needs to be. I don't think you're going to get, you're not going to get the best out of people unless they enjoy going to work. And then at that point, it really is making those hard decisions. I've had several conversations with different city managers, city administrators, and they really talk about vision and how vision should be at the forefront of department heads and committees, because if you don't have that vision, you're not going to get to that next level where you need to be.
What does kind of your vision for Grand Island then look like? You talked about it a little bit already.
Yeah, when we compare Grand Island to other communities, I'm a competitive person, and we are competing. We're competing for grants, we're competing for workers and for housing, and so it's really how can we be competitive with our communities around us. I think quality of life's a big piece of that. I think our school system's a big piece of that. There's a lot of cogs in that wheel, but again, I think we have to be aware of all of those coming together to make a community.
As you look at it, you know, if somebody was an outsider, maybe sometimes we take for granted what our own community offers. What do you think are some of those strong, you know, kind of selling points that maybe kind of set our community apart that maybe we need to focus on and kind of sell to outsiders?
I think as a young professional, there's no better place to be. I feel like whether you're switching careers or starting a career, I feel like there's just support and a strong network there. And not only are there strong young professionals, but then there's leadership all the way up. And so if you're starting your career and wanting to grow your career, there's leaders and mentors and people cheering you on all the way to, you know, at the retirement age and beyond. But I just really want to encourage people that you don't need to wait till you're retired or at the end of your career to serve your community in some capacity. I think now is the time to do it. My slogan for the campaign is "Why Not Now?" And I really feel like there's never a perfect time when you're going to have nothing else on your plate.
Sure.
And so you don't need to wait to serve. Really, why not now?
Just in terms of city government, I mean, it is so broad because, like I said, you one day might be dealing with infrastructure issues or sewer and things that are not so glamorous, or law enforcement or fire department, or setting personnel numbers in a particular department, or hours at the library, or whatever it may be. There's all these different things, and we're probably experiencing some growing pains as a community because we are a metropolitan area now. That changes some of our salary things and all of these things. And we probably need to do some things in terms of transportation. And I could go on and on and on. Maybe where as mayor do you see yourself kind of setting the vision of how we kind of develop processes to deal with some of those different things?
Yeah, as mayor, there are so many things that you're looking at, even on a daily basis. And so I really think it's ensuring that we have those department heads in the right seats and making sure that we have strong leadership all the way throughout, because they are really the experts in that department. And as long as a city, we know that they have the best interests of the city in mind, both now and long term, I think that's the first step. And then once you can ensure that that leadership is in place, then you're really just overseeing and making sure that everyone's working together. But I think that would be the first thing I take a look at, is just making sure that those top seats are the best that we have.
The first mayor when I moved to this community, it was Ken Gannott. I don't know if you ever knew Ken, but I always appreciated him because I always thought he was kind of this community's biggest cheerleader, that if the governor was here, Ken was going to be there, and he was going to be the first guy to shake his hand, or whoever came to town. That I always thought he kind of set the tone that we're going to be a welcoming community, and if somebody was ever needed to say things about the community, well, gosh darn it, he was going to step up and be that. Do you see that as a role for mayor, of kind of being the community's biggest cheerleader and the biggest supporter and all of that?
Absolutely. I know that there is a lot that goes behind the scenes when you're the mayor, but I also think a big part of it is being front and center, being able to have that smile, to make the speech, to greet, and making sure that's a welcoming community for everyone. And so I do think while, being the spokesperson for the city, that's not the only job of the mayor, I do feel like it's an important one.
Here comes a point where I'm like, what did I not ask?
No, that's okay.
I feel like we've kind of hit a lot of ground. Talked about some of the financial stuff, some overseeing departments, just general philosophy, your background. I don't know. Is there anything else that you'd probably kick yourself for playing this?
Yeah.
Think of other stuff. But
the only other things that a couple of things I found really surprising as I was going through this process is it has been 81 years since someone under 40 has run for mayor, and in the 145 years of mayor, there's only been one female. And so, again, while I'm not just trying to be a mayor for young people or just for women, but I think that those are important statistics to show. And again, this isn't a job just to do when you're done with your career, but I really feel like young people need to get involved. We need to get in the arena as well and really form the Grand Island that we want.